Well, greetings. Thank you very much for joining our new live show with Austin here. So I'm Michael Groves. I'm the founder of Dwarvin Enterprises, as most of you know. But I have with me today Austin Mitchell.
Hello.
So Austin is the oldest grandson of my son-in-law, Joel Mitchell. Joel's part of our organization as well. He does all the finance and administration part for the company. But Austin really is our chief engineer. And at the age of 19, that's not a bad title to have, right, Austin?
It's not bad at all.
Right. So maybe just I'll tell the audience a little bit more about how you got started with this, into the train business, and what got you started into even the company.
Well, what first got me started was fixing up my granddad's trains on his layout, replacing couplers and fixing the rolling stock. I had a blast doing that. He also allowed me to help build a circuit to switch the voltage on switches. I enjoyed that a lot, and we went from there.
Great. So let's switch. Yeah, we'll put a bit of a stone wall behind us right now, so everybody's familiar with a green screen, right? We even got our Dwarvin shirts on. In fact, let's just go to that for a moment, Austin. How on earth did we get a crazy name like Dwarvin, which many people call Darwin by mistake when we're at shows?
So we were on our way to a show. I was sitting in the back of the car, Nan and Granddad were in the front. We were all just talking about different names that we could have for the company. And they asked me if I had one, and I said Dwarvin. I wasn't quite sure it would fly at the moment, but I thought I liked the sound of it. They liked the sound of it too, apparently, and so we got named Dwarvin Enterprises.
Well, does Dwarven sound a little bit like dwarves as well? And do we have dwarves working for us, like tiny little people who are now rather tall?
Yeah.
They've grown up quite a bit. So let's talk a little bit about then. Austin had worked with me, in fact, yes, on the train layout, doing some electronics, and that was great fun. And it soon dawned on me that Austin was likely to want to become an engineer, and that means plenty of money, right? It's a high-cost education, and so we decided, well, hey, maybe we ought to look at starting a company. Meanwhile, I'd actually put the prototype of the Lamplighter unit onto my layout. If that was only for my own use, and for quite a few years, that's what it did. It just sat there happily, lighting buildings and doing various things. And so Austin and I sort of talked about how do we put something together. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the sort of area that you had to deal with in your first development of a product.
The first development was just trying to figure out how to put it into a case that we could sell it, that could hold the contents and keep them safe from damage. What we ended up with was the Dwarvin Lamplighter Box. There was quite a few challenges going into that. One of the ones I had a lot to do with was clouding from superglue. We used to use superglue in the inside, and we found that it would cloud the lenses and all the stuff we had in there and make it not work well. Another part was switches. We actually found the toggles were starting to fall off of them. Those didn't work well at all, so we took those out as well.
So that's how we ended up with a box that doesn't have an on-off switch, although more recently we've added an RF controller, which sort of has substituted for that and seems to be a lot more reliable. So we went through that development, I guess, and got that out. But of course, having a lamplighter box and some fiber was a great start, but we really needed to get some lamps together. You were very heavily involved in that development, Austin. Talk briefly about that.
Okay. These are our street lamps. They're green, so you can't see them. Here's the street lamps. They work very well. They were this was the first thing that we designed up. I helped design up the bends and what paint to use. There was also one of the difficulties was the glue we used. It wound up destroying the fiber inside, so we actually had to change up and experiment on using different glues.
Right. I think one of the problems was we were using a very high, a very low viscosity, super glue. Mm-hmm. And that just wicked straight down the fiber and just sort of stripped the sides of it. And eventually the fiber even just became brittle and broke. So That was a major challenge. That was great, Austin. So I remember going to a show back in 2018. It was an NMRA show. It was our first show to go to. In fact, I lugged everything along. And there was this guy talking about 3D printing. I knew nothing about 3D printing, didn't even know it was going to be of any interest to us. So I came back, talked a little bit about 3D printing, and that was about it. But I think Austin then got the bug.
That I did. I started out 3D printing, taught myself Fusion 360. There was quite a few times where I wanted to throw my laptop across the room just because it wasn't working. I did eventually figure out a billboard, printed this up at a makerspace near us. We soon after got our own 3D printers, and we now design up and print our own billboards. This is an example of one of the ones we have. 3D printing was a lot of fun. I convinced him to get 2 printers actually, so we use them a lot, and it's been a great time.
So how many 3D printers do you have in your basement now, Austin?
Well, we have two printers we typically use for the business. We have another resin printer we use for other things, and my other brother has a 3D printer as well, and we use that too sometimes.
Great. Yep. So here we are with a company of 4 3D printers when we thought there was no use for them at all, and now they're cranking out lots and lots of products for us. So as we went through this a little bit further, we decided that we want to go from both the illumination mode of lighting to animation. And so our first unit came out with the Lamplighter Flasher unit, but then we realized it would be really great to come out with some railroad crossings. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your involvement with the railroad crossings.
Right. Railroad crossing, that was one of the best projects I've had yet. The first idea we had was to use a light pipe. This involved casting resin, and we actually figured out using a light pipe with a UV cured resin. This worked, but it wasn't as bright as we wanted to, so we had to go to plan B, which was a 3D printed road crossing head.
Okay, yeah. So tell us a bit more about how we got, those parts particularly that we printed up.
Okay, so railroad crossings, we decided to use just straight fiber instead of a light pipe. This way the light output would be a lot brighter. This was my first introduction into UV and SLA printing. This is the package of the railroad crossing. I designed up a little head that the fiber would bend into, and it's held up well and looks great.
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge initially, we thought bringing a fiber up, that's where we thought, well, we're going to use a light pipe on the top of it. And that was the part that just didn't work out for us. Austin put a huge amount of work into that, all sorts of different materials and so on. But yeah, so eventually we decided, okay, we're just going to make a very sharp bend on the fiber to come from going vertical out through the lights. And that seems to have worked. Mm-hmm. So great. So that's the railroad crossings. What else did you get involved with? I think one of the challenges we had was some of the guts inside our lamplighter created a bit of a challenge of just sourcing them. We were buying them from China, but they weren't all that reliable. Some of them didn't work very well. So tell me about that sort of exploration.
Yeah. So we have a small power supply inside of here that we use. We used to get them from China. The quality was off sometimes, and some of them destroyed the internal workings of this. So we decided we would need our own that we could trust and that would be reliable. I helped design that up. We had Vincent help us design it up as well as manufacture them for us. They've been working well.
Yeah, but this was your first time to ever start really working with electronics, wasn't it, Austin?
Mm-hmm.
So
I learned a lot about parasitic inductance and figuring out why the circuit's heating up and destroying itself instead of working right.
Right. Okay, great. And then we had a friend of ours in Malaysia who we knew. Actually, he was in Singapore, but he's Malaysian, and he has a friend, Vincent, in Malaysia. And so we made contact with him, and that's how that all worked out, right? Mm-hmm. But it was really fun. Just walk us through the process of how did you get through. You've got to get printed circuit boards. You've got to get the components on it tested out. Walk us through that.
So first off, I started with a schematic. I used a program, EasyEDA. It's free online. It's a great program. Started with a schematic, made a PCB. I had the PCB sent off. Once I got the PCB back, I populated it myself. That was a fun thing to learn. After a few iterations of that, we had it populated for us, sent back, we tested it out, it worked, and we've gone on from there.
Great, great. So that was quite an experience to get into that. I think that's going to stand you well for some of the stuff you're doing with us right this summer. So let's move a little bit into that. So this year, Austin's been studying at which university? Just tell them a bit.
Laterno University. It's a great little college down in Northeast Texas.
Right. And what's the course you're doing?
Mechanical engineering.
Well, there it is. Engineering. Knew it that would happen someday. So, yeah. But Austin's back on summer break. So we decided, hey, this is an opportunity for an internship, because obviously that's to help pay for the schooling, but also it gives experience for Austin, and it also feeds the company with new products. And the companies always are needing new products. And unfortunately, I'm the ideas person, so I'm always coming up with ideas and then wondering who can actually make them happen, because I can't make things happen. I can just come up with ideas. So it's been a real blessing to have Austin with us. Maybe sort of talk a bit about some of the projects you've been involved with this summer.
All right. This is one of my favorite projects this summer that I've worked on. It's a small switch signal. The way it works is you have two wires that connect to the stall switch, and there's holes that the fibers go into. As the switch switches, one light will go on, the other will go off. This controls 3 small dwarf signals, so that you can tell which direction the switch is switched on your layout. We have them all packaged up. And the nice thing about fiber is if you color it on one side, it colors all the way through. So you can tell which ones are the red and which ones aren't.
Great. So I guess the idea with that is just so that we can have something that just hooks straight onto something like a tortoise machine, a stall machine, right? We can just slap this little unit right straight onto it using a piece of Velcro, put that straight onto it, hook onto the pin 1 and 8 on the tortoise, and then we actually just stick the fibers in, and with the signals on top, both tall signals and dwarf signals. So that becomes a very simple standalone product. And how's that been received? I think we sent out some prototypes, didn't we?
We sent out 5 prototypes. The 5 people that reviewed it all gave 2 thumbs up. They enjoyed it all a lot.
And some of them even purchased. Well, most of them, which is even better. So, yep, so that's great. So that was a pretty good project, and that involved a printed circuit board and some LED stuff on it as well. But a fairly simple one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what was your next project that you started working on for us?
My next project was a dedicated railroad crossing system. This is still in the development phase. You'd be able to just have a trigger as well as a bell, and that would be all you'd need for a railroad crossing. That was a lot of work because we used digital logic. I was kind of clueless about that, so he helped me a lot figure out how to work through it and make it work. We have a running prototype, and we'll be seeing how it goes from then.
Right. So they're due in actually, I think, this Friday. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So expect to see whether Austin designed the circuit properly and got it right. It's an amazing world we live in. You can send it over, and within a couple of days, they've made the circuit board. Actually, even, are we going to have to put the components on it, this one? Okay, so we'll have to put the components on, but then we can test it out, make sure that it works before we go for a larger production. So unbelievably quick turnaround time. So indeed, that should produce a product that you should be able to, essentially, where you've got a railroad crossing, you should be able to just plug this unit in, put the railroad crossings onto it, detectors, a crossing bell, and it'll all just fit in together. We can't change many of the functions in it, but it'll just work out of the box and be a very, very simple design. So again, all using fiber. Well, so that's quite a few projects. Let's talk about possibly well, I've got more projects on the drawing board, Austin, but only Austin can't get to them all. So he's going to talk a bit about the one that that's kind of excited me quite a bit too.
So this project is the yard lamp. It's kind of tall. So this would be used for train yards. It's all 3D printed. Stands about 9 inches tall on the layout to be about 80 scale feet tall. Has a wide beam, and it actually has an adjustable head, down and up.
Right. I think we've kind of limited the range it can go to, right? So what's the range of the bend of the head?
So it's set to sit at 45 degrees with a 15 degrees of freedom on both sides of that. We decided that was the easiest, just looking on his layout, where we would have put it, and also research online that spread was the typical spread.
Great. So Austin, how much have you been involved with in this, in the design of this? I mean, what do you do with it? I mean, I'm just amazed. It just arrives on my desk. We plug it in and we test it out. So just give us a little bit of a flavor of, the componentry into this.
So the components is the big main tower. I was able to just design this up in SolidWorks, printed it up. It fit together pretty well, and the head took a bit more design work. It's 2 moving parts that have to fit together, but this prototype works pretty well. And so I just printed up on our resin printer, and there we go.
Great. So I think you've tried a number of different combinations of the fibers
Right
into the head. What do you think we're settling on right now?
We've decided on a diamond-shaped array of fibers. That way it has the biggest spread of light. I had started out with a array of 4 fibers in a row. This worked, however, the light beam was more oval-shaped, and it wasn't spread out as much as 4 fibers.
Great. Okay. Super. So this is an enormous amount of CAD work that you've had to do on it as well, and testing out the prints and so on. But the nice thing is just to be able to get that turnaround without having to, remember it used to be, well, my days, early days, it would have been you draw it up, CAD, well, you wouldn't even have CAD, and then you have to go to an injection molded, cutting metal, and it's all just high cost, very slow, and just amazing the turnaround. So, good, we've got a couple of questions coming up. How about the flasher units? And I think what you're asking is, so what happens with the flasher unit that we've got, which is called the Lamplighter Flasher? Well, that's really a much more singing and dancing unit, as I'd call it. It's able to do blinking, flashing, everything. You can have it with railroad crossings. You can have it with block signal detection, flashing lights on the top of a building, etc. So there's quite a range of different applications for that. But I think one of the challenges comes when you want, for example, let's say you've got a fairly large layout, and you've got about railroad crossing down here, and then 10 foot away or 20 foot away, you've got another railroad crossing. Well, you're going to have to run fiber a long way for that, which is not a problem for the fiber. But logistically, it's more of a challenge. That's why we decided, okay, probably be useful to have some dedicated units that can actually then function on their own, and where you're not having to run a lot of fiber. Oh, fireworks. Were you involved with that fireworks? I can't remember, Austin.
I was partially involved.
Yeah.
David and I both designed it.
Okay, so tell us about that. Just
Fireworks module, it's basically a Lamplighter 2, 3 Lamplighter 2s shoved in one that is controlled and will flash repeatedly after it's given the signal. That's a great project. I was able to lay out a board of fibers to actually have the firework light come out, painted red, green, and blue. That was a really fun project, having the black surface and lights coming out.
right. So you used an Arduino, basically, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. We used an Arduino to program it.
Yeah. Yep. So very, very simple design, but very effective. We've only made 2 of them. I've got one of them, and a customer has another one, which he uses on his N-scale Disney World show. So it just bursts with fireworks everywhere. So see here another question. Small square box pointing downward from building. Ah, I know what you mean. Okay, got it. So, that'd be an industrial lamp, wouldn't it? part of the challenge there, that's a great idea. Actually, I did get David, who's Austin's younger brother, the next brother in the line. We've got three grandsons working on this on Dwarvin, which is fantastic. But David actually printed up some pieces for me, but they're so tiny. When I scaled down something that was about 18-inch, and you take that down to basically about 18 inches, 45 centimeters. And so now if you take that down to basically divide that by 87, you're down to about 5 millimeters less of them, 5 millimeters for a light. And that's very, very tiny. So I've looked at that and gone, I don't know how we're actually going to even package such a tiny, tiny light as that. But I hear you comment. Maybe that's something we should look at. But I just really want to thank Austin for joining me. This is not something that a young son sort of, or well, you're not so young now, likes to do. But I guess this is one of your first live interviews.
I say it would be.
Okay, good. So we'll get him onto the radio programs in the near future. Let me, meanwhile, though, just sort of as we wrap up, just say, there's a YouTube channel that we have. Most of the stuff, even this interview, will go up on a YouTube channel. And I found most of that stuff very informational. So hopefully that would be a great one to go to. And you can follow our YouTube channel. You can obviously go to our website. We continually work on that website to try and make it more informative, educational, work on a lot of blogs, as well as customer showcase ideas, which is where customers send me lots of their pictures. And initially it was very slow, but now I don't have to ask. People are just sending me these beautiful pictures, and I get more fun out of that than almost anything else. So I do have one question. When do you think those light towers will go on the market? Austin, when do you think we'll be ready?
All right. Well, this is a prototype. I have another one on the resin printer. It's curing currently. I think it's whenever we deem that it's good enough.
Right. I think I'm sort of targeting for the fall to come out with one of those. And actually, a great question is, right now we've got it obviously with a single light, but looking at the marketplace, people are often have two lights on the tower. So I might ask the question, how important is it to come out with the two, or should we just come out with the one first and come out with the two a bit later? Maybe when Austin has his Christmas break. Maybe that's a good time to recommend to people joining the Fiber Guild. In fact, I really found the Fiber Guilds to be tremendously helpful to me because I'm seeing what people are doing, and also just other customers, users, helping others get to answers very quickly, especially when I'm a bit lazy and I haven't gone onto the the Fiber Guild site for a bit. That's just, to me, really exciting to see because it means, we're understanding the technology. And again, I'm learning new things, so I'm really grateful to you guys that post onto the Fiber Guild. So thank you so much for spending time with Austin and myself, and hopefully you'll see some more products, and thank you so much for being with us, Austin, this evening.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So it's bye from us now. All the best to you. Bye for now.